and you'll have to know that she's really good at the oh no face. But either way, here she is. I guess that's as good a thing as any to be famous for. I think there's a mouth cover involved. I have to be like, oh no. See, do it better. You're so good at it. Okay. What the bees have taught me. I dream of a single bee flying toward me aggressively in his cold fear of autumn. In the dream, I cannot bear to destroy him. I am acutely aware of the big way the bees are dying. My supermarket marks produce bins with no bees, no, and the label written in chalk. The same sign in a multitude of places. What we could lose is that interchangeable. I saw a perfectly timed photo of a bee moments after stinging a human arm. The stinger slightly visible and a thin line that seemed made of light connecting bee to person. The way pain can only unite us for a split second before it's unbearable. I wonder about ancient femaleness, the secret buried somewhere deep inside the hive. I have tried to pin it down for so long, followed the bees from flower to flower and then back to origin. I have wanted honey and brushed pollen. What it means to truly be alone, luxuriate instead of fly, and does she keep or is she kept? Where in the spectrum of human femininity has the queen staked her claim? She is bright light at the center, the possibility of everything, the movement of nothing. Now I am a suspicious character. I have wanted the guarded too obviously. Humans, like bees, will die suddenly to keep the answers hidden. So I read that in Yona's workshop last semester and heavily revised it, so I felt like I should read it because I don't want to do the thing where I just read all of the poems that anybody who's a poet at Pitt will have to see 100 million times. So also on that note, I brought a couple poems from Katie Ford's Blood Lyrics, which I read over winter break and really, really loved. So it's like, I can't get away from writing those poems just about being a woman and, you know, blood and guts and stuff. So, but this is a great book. I shouldn't reduce it to that. It's really interesting how she weaves kind of like motherhood and war and embodiment and all that. So I'm going to read one. It's about snow at night. So it's really appropriate. And then another one, and then the title poem that's, I think of it kind of as an Ars Poetica, and the last poem I'm going to read is kind of an Ars Poetica, so that they kind of were a nice bookend. Okay. Snow at night. I prefer it even to love. Alone and without ghost, it falls a hard weather. A withdrawing room that revives me to stolen daylight, in which I feel no wish to brush a gleaming finish over the sheen-broken glass I've arranged and rearranged. An apprentice of mosaics who will not be taught, but asked to be left alone with the brittle year so carnivorous of all I'd made. But the snow I love covers my beasts and seas, my ferns and spines worn through and through. I will change your life, it says, to which I say, please. And Blood Lyric. I come to you without wound and in the strength of my life. Heaven cannot touch me, neither can the earth. In this clear field, the stripped birch does not represent me. Thus I give back the respect I once stole. I give back its own life trying to break through the low canopy draped like an abandoned wedding tent. I am without wound, but this is a small slat I speak through and briefly. By the end of these words, strength might be gone, new pain come, old pains returned as elderly selves grown quiet with the knowledge of what did and did not happen. Long live such confidence as I have these 5 minutes now. Long live the primate's human eyes inside of the cage. Long live the surgeon steady enough to examine the bloody heart beating in his hands before the minutes are up and it must be put back inside. So the last, well, it's kind of the last thing I'm going to read, but it's several sections of a long poem I'm working on, or maybe a series of poems, or I don't know what it's gonna turn into. We're doing this thing in Lynn Emanuel's workshop right now where we're writing a poem a day that's at least 14 lines. So I kind of got on this pathway and just like ran with it. But the cool thing about writing that much is that I feel like I got to this place where I can just like see anything and make a poem out of it, which sounds more uplifting than what this poem is, but you'll see. So I saw this news article via Facebook one day, and I just brought in like a little section of it rather than try to explain it myself. So yeah, it's about symphysiotomy, which is this crazy surgical procedure that was done on 1,500 plus women in Ireland without their consent over a period of time. I think from 1941 to 2005. So it was the last one performed was relatively recent. But so this is from the article that I originally saw. The survivors of symphysiotomy submission to the United Nations Committee Against Torture makes for difficult reading. Within the 50-page document, some of the 300 survivors recount their personal experiences of the childbirth operation, which has been described as barbaric and cruel. A symphysiotomy was a procedure carried out on pregnant women before, during, or after birth in the place of a cesarean section. It involved breaking the patient's pelvis and leaving it permanently enlarged. The women, the majority of whom were in their early 20s and having their first child, have suffered chronic pain, incontinence, walking difficulties, sexual problems, and other issues for their entire lives as a result. One survivor described the experience of the chainsaw used to incise the pubic bone in pubiotomy, and even riskier but related surgery, as like being cut with broken glass. So it looks like this. It's in sections, and they're every once in a while there are lines that are italicized that are taken straight out of the testimony from the treatise that was drawn up for the United Nations. I'm going to try to make it obvious where those parts are, but it's kind of hard to. Yeah, so I'm just going to read these straight through and hope that they become a full poem one day. Okay. It's just called Symphysiotomy. My husband was a cross man. You're only half a woman, he said, after the hysterectomy. And so far, being a woman has meant, and so far the word archaic is a misnomer. The doctors were gods, absolutely, in their own minds they were. For the god of breaking without cause wears many faces, dozens of hospitals in Ireland, and what gave them the right to split a life into two was the simple standing over, the looking down. The child's doctor would say, "Did you ever hear any mother say anything right?" Mother, the briefly unmythologized, holding a cup of warm water in one hand. Mother, the original loss, the first goodbye. On the operating table, she is surrounded by every kind of ghost. You can have 10 children, all normal, he said. They did it without my permission. And each and every ghost there without her consent, the babies she will never have, the life she will never walk through, the empty spaces that will never offer rest. The way ghosts could walk through walls, the doctor says, you need to go through the pains of childbirth. And this is when he pulls out a saw, like being cut with broken glass, and she thinks she catches a glimpse of some Catholic ghost, one cut straight down from her navel for the symphysiotomy, one straight across for the emergency cesarean, across and across and across. And this one is just all italics. It's just a long quote that I line broke. All the baby clothes, the ones my grandmother had bought, we had to throw out. Chris had to make the coffin and bury the baby himself. She was buried under a tree. We had no money. I couldn't walk. Where is she buried? I asked him years later. My back started to fall down. I couldn't balance, I couldn't straighten. It stopped everything. I was in awful pain. And the number of ways the poem wants to say the mother was split open and at the broken places were born the nuclear family. The poem stops to ask itself the implications of her pubic bone being made into metaphor, the way her body falls into the background. She breathes into the empty space, and the poem is wholly differentiated, never even resembled a stem cell, waiting for her calling out in the maternity ward. And the dialectic between wanting and burden always belonged to her. The metaphor always, I'd like them to go through it to see how it felt. That's all I've got.